Today is Hey Nissan, the 5th day of Nissan, and the Tanya for today is in Perek Lamed Ches, chapter 38, on page 100, about 8 lines from the bottom. We're saying that there's a great difference in the amount of godliness, or the expansiveness of the godliness that exists in the kavanah of the mitzvah, more so than there is in the act of the mitzvah. He mitzad atzmo l'maylo medveikus kiyam hamitzvos ma'asiyos b'peil mamosh. And this does not mean, the Rebbe says, that the dveikus of the thought and the intelligence of the person, that they themselves, thought and intelligence, have some kind of a superiority, an advantage over the dveikus that comes through the act of the mitzvah itself. As we will explain later, it's not so. It's only because it is also God's will that a person should cleave to Him through his seichel, through his machshava, and through his kavanah, in mitzvahs and in kriyas shema and davening and other brachos. And this godliness, this revelation of God's will, that illuminates and is clothed in this kavanah, it is much greater and much higher than the godly will that is clothed and is revealed in the kiyum mitzvahs atzman b'maisa dibur b'li kavanah. The godliness that is revealed in the act of the mitzvah itself, or in the speech of the mitzvah itself, without kavanah, kegedul mailas eid haneshama al haguf. How much greater is the kavanah in the mitzvah over the mitzvah without the kavanah, as much as the neshama is greater than the body. Shehu keili umalbush haneshama, because the body is the vessel and the garment for the neshama. Kmei guf hamitzvah atzma shehu keili umalbush lekavanasa, as is the body of the mitzvah, which is the act of the mitzvah, is a keli and a garment for its kavanah. The mitzvah ubekavanasa, and although in both the mitzvah and the kavanah of the mitzvah, melubish rotzein echot poshet betachlis hapshitus, you have the presence of God's will, which is indivisible, has no parts, and therefore you can't distinguish between one part of God's will and another. The li shum shinli v'ribu chas v'sholem, without any increase, without any change, God forbid. In other words, there's no increase of will in the kavanah, or decrease of will in the act of the mitzvah. They are both joined and united in God's essence, with a total oneness, afal pikein, and in spite of this, but when it comes to tzimtzum and hispashtus, when it comes to contraction and expansion, here they are different. And he says in the note, that the kavanah of the mitzvah, study of Torah, is the light, and the act of the mitzvah is the vessel. Shehem bechinas tzimtzum, shayidei tzimtzum ha'ein nishavu hakelim ki yadua liyedechem. So what does it mean when we compare or we describe the act of the mitzvah to the keli and the kavanah of the mitzvah to the eir? Eir means expansion, keli means contraction. So in the kavanah of the mitzvah, there's a greater expansion of godliness, and in the act of the mitzvah, because it is the keli, there's a greater tzimtzum, a greater contraction. But in terms of God's will, the kavanah and the mitzvah are perfectly equal. And here also we have 4 different levels. Just as in creation there are 4 levels. Ki guf ha-mitzvahs atzman mamash, because the body of the mitzvah itself, literally the body, hein beis madreges, shehein mitzvahs maisiyes mamash, o mitzvahs atluyes b'dibur u'machshavo. In the act of the mitzvah we have 2 categories, the literal act and that which is also considered an act, which is speech and thought. As for example, the mitzvahs of the study of Torah, the reading of the Shema, davening, benching, and so on, other brachas. So you have 2 levels in the act of the mitzvah. The kavanas ha-mitzvahs, and also in the kavana of the mitzvah you have 2 levels. The kavana being the desire to cleave to him, shehi ke neshama leguf, and this is the neshama of the mitzvah, like a neshama is to a body. Nechlek es gam ken l'shtei madreges. This too is divided into 2 categories. Kemei shtei madreges ha-neshama, just as we find 2 levels of neshama. Shehem beguf ha-chumri, that exists in physical bodies. Shehem chayu medaber. We find 2 levels of nefesh in the physical world, the nefesh of the animal and the nefesh of the human being. In the same way, in kavana, in the kavanas of mitzvahs, there are 2 levels. There's that level which is called the animal, the chai level, and there's that level which is called the human or the medaber level. And as the Rebbe will explain in tomorrow's shiur, that there's a level of neshama, of kavana, that is compared to the human, in that it comes as a result of knowledge, of understanding godliness. And this understanding produces a love and fear which animates the act of the mitzvah. That's called the human kavanah, because it comes as a result of choice, from understanding and from pursuing it, and arousing the love and fear through personal effort. On the other hand, the person who doesn't understand godliness that well arouses the natural, native love that every Jew has for God, and that's compared to the animal level, because the love and the fear of the animal is instinctive, not by choice, but without choice, involuntary. And the same way, this ava and yira that a Jew arouses within himself, that comes not from intelligence and from knowledge and from understanding, but that which a Jew is born with and needs only to be aroused, that is more like the animal level, because it is an involuntary love. He can't help being a Jew, and as a Jew he has this love. So we have 2 levels of the act of the mitzvah, and we have 2 levels of kavanah of the mitzvah. Just as in the physical world, there are 4 levels of the expansion of godliness: the inorganic, the vegetable, the living, and the intelligent, the animal and the human being. In the same way with mitzvahs, there is the literal act of the mitzvah you do with your hands and feet, and then there is the act of the mitzvah that is performed with the mouth, through speech. Then there is the mitzvah that is performed with kavanah, but the kavanah is involuntary. It comes from the native, inborn love that a Jew has for God. And then there is the highest level, the human, the love and the kavanah that comes as a result of knowledge and understanding. Tahayim Yom for Hey Nissan, the 5th day of Nissan. First, the Rebbe says that in the tzei, in the benching, we say Baal HaYeshuais with a beis, or Baal HaNechamis with a vase. Then the Rebbe writes that my grandfather, the Rebbe Maharash, said that the statement of the Razal, that it is not the place of the person that brings him honor, but it is the person that honors the place. The Rebbe Maharash explained that the word kaved has 2 meanings. It means heaviness and indifference, as it says concerning Pare, Kabed Lev Pare, that his heart was heavy and indifferent, didn't respond. And also Lashon Kaved, which means the revelation of a high level of makif. Honor meaning a reputation which is higher than the person, surrounds the person. And this is what it means. It is not the place of the person that brings him kaved. it is not the place of the person that cools him off and makes him indifferent. Rather, it is the person that is mechabed his place. The person has the koyach to bring a great light and great strength of Torah and Aveda to the place which is his portion of the world. And just as it is when the neshama comes down into the body, we're told that mashbiyim eisei tehi tzaddik, that he is given a shvua, he's made to promise that he will be a tzaddik. And this shvua is not only a promise, but it is also a nourishment that gives the neshama the ability, the high talents, that it should be able to fulfill its purpose in coming down into this world. This is true of every person in the place in which he is. And therefore, the place can never be blamed for cooling off the person and discouraging him from fulfilling his purpose. Rather, the person has the ability to bring a great gilui and a great kavod to the place in which he is, to the place which is his portion in the world.